Alrighty, everyone, welcome back. So this is going to be a very interesting video. We're going to finally start discussing which division in the NHL is the best, or the hardest, or just overall the most entertaining. Those are the things we're going to dive into in this video. We spent the last 2 days looking at each conference and each division and, just looking at the overall race with them. You don't really need to watch those videos to know what this video is about. But those videos are mainly just for, to look at the wild card races for each division. Pretty much that. But this video is going to be based solely on trying to determine which division is the hardest. And it really shouldn't be that difficult of an argument, but we're still going to discuss some viewpoints that I did look at that maybe some other people will overlook. So, again, we're not going to go in depth with teams. I might touch base with teams a little bit, but this is solely based off of the division. So we're just going to go in order here, starting off with the Atlantic Division. Obviously, you have the Boston Bruins, 19-5-6 for 44 points, leading the way there. The Leafs, 6 points behind. I can't do math. With a 16-8-6 record for 38 points. The Panthers are tied with the Leafs for an 18-12-2 record for 38 points. Then you have the Tampa Bay Lightning in fourth with 16-13-5 record for 37 points. Then you have the Detroit Red Wings, 3 points behind the Lightning with a 15-13-4 record for 34 points. Then you have the Montreal Canadiens with a 14-13-5 record for 33 points. Then you have the Buffalo Sabres with a 14-17-3 record for 31 points. And then you have the Ottawa Senators ending off with 11-17-0 record for 22 points. So obviously the Atlantic is the one that people look at and view as the most competitive one this season. Obviously, you have 7 teams right now that I'd say are still in the race for it. Mathematically, every team's still in it, but, usually there's a lot of teams that are still, not in it. Obviously, Ottawa's literally 10 points behind, is almost 10 points behind the Buffalo Sabres for 7th. So, definitely, they're probably falling out of the race by now. But you look at that division, you got 7 teams in there that are very competitive this year, that are really making a good case for themselves that they could make the playoffs, and that really wasn't expected. Many people expected for Montreal to not be in the race, and maybe Ottawa to be in the race, but overall, it's been a very competitive division all around. Even the Senators are still stealing wins from teams in that Atlantic division. Now, I don't want to fully base it off of points, because if I do, that pretty much makes 3 of the 4 divisions automatically tie with each other. I don't want to just base it off of points there either, but it's definitely something we'll take into consideration once we go through all of the divisions. So we're going to go to the Central Division next. We're going to go to the West now. Starting off here with the Dallas Stars, they have a 19-8-4 record for 42 points. You have the Colorado Avalanche then in second place with a 20-11-2 record for 42 points. Then you have the Winnipeg Jets with a 19-9-3 record for 41 points. Then you have the Nashville Predators in fourth with a 19-14-0 record for 38 points. The Coyotes just 2 points behind them with a 17-13-2 record for 36 points. Then you have the St. Louis Blues, 3 points behind the Coyotes for a 16-15-1 record for 33 points. Then you have the Wild with a 14-13-4 record for 32 points. Then you have the Chicago Blackhawks in last with a 10-20-1 record for 21 points. I apologize if I'm going a little bit too fast for you guys there. That is my fault. But regardless, as you can tell, there are, I'd say, 7 of the teams are still in it. I would realistically count in St. Louis and Minnesota as teams that are still in it, even though they're a few points behind Arizona for that second wildcard spot. But obviously, they hold the 2 wildcard placements. They are playing very well right now, and definitely it's a division that on the top 3, like Winnipeg, Dallas, and Colorado, it's very competitive. It's changing pretty much every night, and it could change tonight too if the Jets get the win tonight. So it really varies on, what night to night, what the divisions are going to be like. And obviously, as I mentioned, these divisions are as December 22nd, 2023. So you may look at this and be like, oh, Winnipeg's first tomorrow. It was before that I recorded this. Just have to clarify that there with this division. But yeah, the Central, obviously another very competitive division. And I want to mention something too. It's a very competitive league. It's hard to really say which division is the hardest and which division's the easiest. You can kind of tell, but overall, it's a very competitive league. Anything can happen from night to night, especially this season, too. Like this season, I'd say about still well over half the league still in the playoff race. And that wasn't an argument last season. I don't believe so. Moving on into the Metropolitan Division now, you have the New York Rangers leading the way with a 22-7-1 record for 45 points. Then you have the Philadelphia Flyers with an 18-11-3 record for 39 points. Then you have the Islanders with a 15-8-9 record for 39 points. The Capitals, 17-9-4 for 38 points. The Carolina Hurricanes, a 17-12-4 record for 38 points. The Devils, a 16-13-2 record for 34 points. The Penguins, a 15-13-3 record for 33 points. Then you have the Columbus Blue Jackets with a 11-17-6 record for 28 points. Now, I view the Metro and the East as divisions where once the playoffs start and once, all the teams lock in for the playoffs and all the teams make it, there are going to be at least 2 or 3 teams in both those divisions that probably are playoff teams, but they miss because of how competitive it is. And especially, too, one of the teams that I mentioned in the video when I looked at the Eastern Conference was the Philadelphia Flyers. They have just flipped the division upside down. They are second right now. It's very possible by the time that the season's over, the Flyers could be, out of the playoff race. I'm not crossing it out of the equation as a Flyers fan. I definitely expect for it to happen. I wouldn't be surprised either if it happened. But obviously, it's made the division a lot more competitive. And people also viewed the Islanders to be out of the playoff race too. But with all the overtime points they're getting, they have shown that, they're winning enough games they need to, and getting enough points to stay in the race as well. And I view 7 of those 8 teams as teams that are playoff teams right now. Montreal. The Atlantic, I don't really know if I view it that much. There's teams that are in the race, but are they necessarily playoff teams? I don't think so. I view all of those 7 teams right now, I think, are playoff teams just by looking at them. I genuinely believe they are. So it's going to come down to be very interesting what the Metropolitan Division is for sure. So finally, we have the Pacific Division. And the Pacific Division is very interesting because I think it's pretty obvious that it's the weakest one. I'm just going to say it right here. It's the weakest division. You look at the overall top-end talent and the teams, it's definitely a much more weaker division with just the overall team. So you got the Vancouver Canucks, actually first place in the NHL with a 22-9-3 record for 47 points. You have the Knights tied with them for a 21-8-5 record for 47 points. You have the Los Angeles Kings 7 points behind them with a 18-7-4 record for 40 points. Then you have the Flames in 4th with a massive 7-point drop-off from the Kings with a 14-14-5 record for 33 points. The Kraken 11-14-9 for 31 points behind them. Then you got the Oilers, a 14-15-1 record for 29 points. Then you have the Ducks with a 12-20-0 record for 24 points. Then you finally have the Sharks with a 9-21-3 record for 21 points. So, again, I view the Pacific as the weakest division when you look at the points, the top-end talent. Everything in there is just, all in all, it's not the strongest division. Now, I understand that you have the 2 best teams in the NHL by a pretty decent margin. You have Connor McDavid in that division, Leon Draisaitl in that division. There is some talent there, but when you look at the overall talent spread across all of the teams, it's not that strong. You look at the 3 teams right now, it's probably going to stay that way. I hate to say it, but I don't view Calgary and the Kraken and the Oilers really making comebacks here. The Oilers maybe, but I don't know if I can view the other teams as filling in those wild card spots. I think the wild card spots in the Western Conference are going to go over to the Central Division teams. Like Nashville and Arizona, if they keep up the way they're playing, there is a lot of time left in the season, but they realistically can make the playoffs with the way they're playing right now. And you look at just the overall drop-off in points from 3rd place to the 4th place team, it's a 7-point drop-off. Even in the Atlantic, it's 1 point. The Metro, it's 1 point. The Central, it's only 5 points. So it's really easy to tell that, it's definitely a much more weaker division when you look at it that way. Now, again, top-end talent, when you look at it, there's a lot of top-end talent in each division. Obviously, the Pacific has a lot. The Central has a lot of top-end talent, too. But when you look at the overall teams that are playing really well right now, I would say there are 7 in the Metro, 7 in the Atlantic. You could argue that there's 7 in the Central, but I said 5 because obviously the Blues and the Wild have kind of been middling a little bit so far. And I'd say for the Pacific, there's only 3. Like, I mean, like, yeah, the Oilers are still in it, the Flames are still in it, the Kraken are still in it, but I'd say right now there's only 3 teams that are still in it right now for a playoff spot at this point in time. Maybe something changes between then and now, but at this point, that's just how I view it. Again, now you got to look at schedule too. When you look at scheduling, it's clear that the West has much easier schedules when you just look at the overall teams. Obviously the West is just honestly much more weaker than the East. Like, I'd say about 14 of the 16 teams right now are still in it for a playoff spot, even though some may view Buffalo and Montreal and maybe the Penguins as teams that aren't still in it. But just right now, points wise, there's a lot of teams that are still competing for it at this point in the season. And at this point last year, I'd say there was a lot less teams that were competing for it. So, yeah, that's what I factor into it. My final ranking, I'm not going to go too more in depth here because there isn't a whole lot to it. It's pretty obvious what the division ranking is. The worst division or the easiest is the Pacific. There's no question. Like, there's 3 teams right now that are really ahead of the race. And then apart from that, it's just a bunch of 500 teams and teams that are rebuilding. So, yeah, the Pacific is number 4. Number 3, I put the Central. The Central, I think, is much more competitive than it has been in previous years. But just when you look at the overall scheduling, it's much easier for Western Conference teams to compete. Obviously, too, Arizona and Nashville have been pleasant surprises. When you just look at the overall talent, too, I'd say there's more in the Eastern Conference than there is the Western Conference. Number 2, I have the Metropolitan. That's pretty obvious what number 1 is then. But the Metro, I think, is going to really come down to the last bit in the season. I really do think it is. You have 7 teams right now that are still in the race. I believe the Capitals do hold that second wildcard spot, and Pittsburgh's only 5 points behind them. So realistically, it's still a really competitive division. It's going to come down to the end of the year to see what's going to happen. And obviously, as I mentioned, there's going to be some teams that are actually that may have been playoff teams last year or are really good teams this year that miss out. And finally, number 1, I have the Atlantic Division. Pretty obvious there. I view that division as the best. I think overall in the first 4 teams, that's enough to tell me that it's better than some of the other divisions. As well as that too, like the Wings have really surprised us this year. The Habs have really surprised us this year. The Sabres, even though there's been struggles, they're still getting enough points to where they're in the race. So I'd say overall the Atlantic is the hardest division. In the NHL. So let me know your thoughts down below. Thank you for watching. If I missed a different viewpoint that you guys thought of, let me know in the comments down below. I really like some other feedback, but regardless, thank you for watching. We'll go back to some other content tomorrow. 3 days till Christmas, so we'll have a video tomorrow, the 24th, and then Christmas Day we'll just look at what I got for Christmas from my parents. Expect some jerseys in there too. I got some that I know of coming on the way. So anyways, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Adios.